Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2018 heist comedy titled Ocean's 8. This is actually a all-female reboot from the famous Ocean series, which came out in the early 2000s, which was, of course, a remake from the original Ocean's 11 series, which starred, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and the rest of the Rat Pack. So this one is just a reboot with a all-female cast. Now, this movie runs for 1 hour and 50 minutes long. It is directed by Gary Ross. It is produced by Steven Soderbergh, who directed the Ocean series back in the early 2000s. Well, he's taking more of a production role here, along with Susan Eakins. The script was written by Gary Ross and Olivia Milch, and it is based off of the characters from the original Ocean's 11 series, George Clayton Johnson and Jack Golden Russell. The score was done by Daniel Pemberton, the cinematography by Eigil Berld, and it was edited by Juliet Welfing. And the stars of the movie are Sandra Bullock. It also stars Cate Blanchett, Anne Hathaway, Mindy Kaling, Sarah Paulson, Awkwafina, Rihanna, Richard Armitage, and James Corden. Now, though it is made with the best of intentions to appease to the female fans who are into the spy and heist genres that made the Ocean series and remakes in the 2000s a hit for the guys, it still seems to come a bit short in terms of developing a solid story and creating scenes that you could keep in your memory for a long time to come. Ocean's 8 stars Sandra Bullock as grief-stricken Debbie Ocean, who just recently gotten on parole, leaves the premises sporting the maximum security in Nevada in a pair of stilettos and an evening gown. Now, if you've seen 2001's Ocean's 11, you'll notice she's the same woman in the opening scene, which you'll be bored by the results of the outcome that is yet to come. Once she's out, she pulls off a few highly prolific heists, but contemplates on setting up a group of top-notch female counterparts in an attempt to steal a 6-pound Toussaint Cartier diamond necklace that's owned by an actress located at the Met Gala. Now, this Toussaint Cartier is probably one of the most expensive necklaces out there, and it comes at a pretty hefty price with a couple of zeros to boot, somewhere in the million mark. And of course, if they are able to succeed in this heist, they'll each have what you would call a piece of the pie. In other words, if this is $50 million, it's gonna be all split divided with this this octofecta of female heists. Octofecta, of course, means eightsome. Unfortunately, the only things that hold my interest is the ultra-expensive necklace that's worth up to, oops, I'm sorry, it's not $50 million. It's actually $150 million, this necklace, which is being held at the Met Gala, where the heist is supposed to be. Even that, it still looks like an overlong commercial pitch than the female empowerment spiel that the movie loosely chimes about. So instead of, like trying to have an interesting story with interesting characters, it looks just like an overlong commercial to sell jewelry. That's what it feels like, with a bit of an espionage twist to it. And no, I am not trying to sound sexist or anything. In fact, like I said before, the intentions were good. If it's trying to encourage females to get more interested in spy and heist movies, well, maybe it is doing that kind of serviceable job. But at least come up with something more interesting. At least come up with larger-than-life characters. Instead, what we're getting here is just really just poorly developed characters and not really enough chemistry. In fact, it's so bad that there really isn't none of the main characters, even the principal two, namely Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett. They don't really get that much time for themselves either. I mean, I think they were just trying to cram too many characters at once that even the main characters get lost in the shuffle. That's kind of like how poorly the chemistry is in this movie. Unlike the other Ocean series, the main characters and the minor ones were easier to invest in because they held our interest and they were more larger than life, and they pulled off even much more dangerous heists than what they're doing. In the scenes held at the gala that caters to the wealthy, we see an eccentric but clueless fashion designer named Rose Wheel, played by Helena Bonham Carter, pandering over a group of jewelry dealers. As you would predict, the dealers offer the two-saint necklace to Miss Wheel so that she can place it around the neck of Hollywood actress Daphne Kluger, played by Anne Hathaway, to wear at the gala. Now, Hathaway's character also sort of serves as a bit of a mule to this heist. And then, in the end, there's this twist, but there are some twists in this movie, but they come across as being a bit flat and at times quite anticlimactic. The crooks as a whole lack very much in character development, let alone really aren't given enough backstory as to who they are and why they're pulling off this heist. To me, I think it's just Debbie Ocean is just doing this to follow the Ocean's legacy. But even that also comes across as being very wanton, flat, and nothing really of that much interest. I'm not trying to sound sexist, by the way. It's just that I guess Hollywood had not learned from the all-female Ghostbusters reboot. And, that's not to say that the intentions weren't good. But, listen, if they wanted to do a reboot, and then they want to spread, diversity and stuff like that. Well, diversity means all people are created equal and no one should be shut down and no one should be, left out. That's what equality means. It's not about domination. It's not about usurping or upstaging. It's about everyone created equally so that neither anybody is insignificant or inferior. Those are the two most awful words that people can call it. The worst two of the in family, inferior and insignificant. I do not condone people being treated that way. We're all equal. That's really what the true meaning of feminism should be. It's not about male hating. It's not about male bashing. It's not about It's not about anything you can do, I can do better. It's more like anything you can do, I could be equal. I can do it equally. We all have good days, we all have bad days. Either way, makes no difference. That's what should be the meaning of feminism. It should be based on a moderate egalitarian system instead of just domination. But like I said, before, in this movie, there was just really poor character development, and there was just no backstory. The eighth member that was added to the group was just a purely incoherent way of storytelling. In addition to that, the crooks actually do very little because it's the technological apparatuses they utilize do it for them. Whereas, like the characters from the previous Ocean's movies with George Clooney and Matt Damon, these guys are go-getters. They actually put their own lives in danger, and they don't have to depend too heavily on overly powered technological advances, their laptops, their electronical devices, little handheld, little remote control toy type of things. No. If that's the case, then it's not the ladies who are actually pulling the heist. It's their mechanical apparatuses that are actually committing the heists, not them. They're just pushing a few buttons. Big fat hairy deal. So in the end, it's their electronical devices that are actually being the ones committing the heist. And they're just getting the glory. Of course, what I mean by also getting the glory is they're not really doing very much, and they're the ones getting paid. When yet maybe the payday should come to their electronical devices. And I don't think they're really asking for a salary. I guess the electronical devices are just doing it pro gratis. We have, what's interesting here is, of course, Nine Ball, played by Rihanna, who was 2016's co-chairperson at the gala, has managed to invent a special pair of glasses with the ability to hack into objects and get the information from a 3D printer. Yeah, her character is a pretty interesting one. First of all, she looks like a street thug, but underneath that tough demeanor and that ain't gonna mess with me type of girl character, she is also, seems to me like she has a master's degree in engineering, but she prefers to have that tough outer shell demeanor about her. So once again, like I said, it's just the apparatuses, the technological things that are actually committing the heist. They're just pushing a few buttons. But I still think it's a pretty cool invention nonetheless. Her specs can also hack through the Met's security cameras and can find a blind spot that avoid the ultra cool but less dangerous dependency using wires. Like I said, very little interaction within the characters, and very limited in terms of dialogue or clever proses. In the Ocean series from the early 2000s, I mean, there was exchanges in dialogue. Maybe it wasn't that frequent because, these guys have to play it as laid back and cool. But still, when they did say something, it was often clever, witty, and funny. Here, I think they played it way too safe, and there really wasn't very many scenes that could be even regarded as a comedy. At least in the Ocean's series between 2001 to 2007, at least we actually had, actually it did play off as a heist comedy. Here, I think they just took things way, 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 way too seriously, and it really shouldn't. It just does not make anything all the more exciting. So while the scenes seem to just meander as time passes, with the ladies getting through security with their high-tech gadgets, rather than the physical schemers like the Ocean's characters from the trilogy in the 2000s, it takes the last 20 minutes before everything falls into place. I know, people are going to say, oh, Eric is going to sympathize with the guys, right? Because he's a guy. Not true at all. But I just want to say that the only exciting scenes come at the last 20 minutes. And I was actually quite patient to actually sit through this. I mean, look, I am a true blue film critic. I will, even through the most shittiest movies of them all, and I'm not saying this is the worst, and I'm not saying this is the worst pile of crap, but still, I'll sit through anything. Because in order for me to do a legitimate movie review, even the worst movies in the world, hey, I bought my ticket. I sat through it. And now I have to suffer through it. Even though I don't say that I suffered through this movie, I'm just making a hypothesis. But still, in order for me to tell a legitimate, true blue review, I will sit through anything. I have the patience. Maybe some people will walk out, but I never walk out. I mean, I never complain about things like, oh, this is 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. Listen, when you're in life, everything that you do counts. Whether you're fulfilling your time or wasting your time, everything counts by the minute. So, I sat through this movie like I do with everyone. Sure, I'll even sit through movies that can go on for 3 minutes, 3 hours long. Well, 3 minutes, 3 hours. But I don't know. I thought that the only time anything had a little bit of interest came during the end. Maybe some people will probably say too long and too late, but I never stooped to that low to say something in that particular frame of mind. James Corden is the insurance investigator by the name of John Fraser, finally catches on what these lady hackers are up to. In these 20 minutes alone, he definitely has more dialogue than the talented pickpocketer named Constance, played by Awkwafina, or the jewel maker Amita, played by Mindy Kaling. The expertise of these ladies are so advanced that they don't necessarily need hold on as a cohesive unit, except for in the climactic heist. Whereas in the Ocean series in the past, and I don't want to sound like an old-timer here, but at least the interactions were really there because they were there. They actually physically put their lives on the line in danger to succeed in their heists. Whereas these ladies just seem to hide behind their electronical machinery. The heist pans off no differently to the modernized ways of co-working spaces and out-of-town contractors. I mean, or even people who still manage to find the time to work from home and just to collect their pay. People do things like that too. In a way, sometimes that's kind of like, in a way, that's sometimes kind of like how the impression I get when I look at these group of female hackers in the oceans, in this Oceans reboot, Oceans 8. Sure, most of the shady characters from the previous Oceans series were vague to one another or esoteric, like the amazing Yen, played by Qin Xiaobo, who was one of two of the original Oceans characters who makes a cameo appearance. The other one was Elliot Gould's character. I think his name was Ruben. He also has a very small and somewhat anticlimactic cameo that didn't really have anything of significance per se. The crooks were pretty much distanced from one another most of the time, which gives this reboot a lack of chemistry. The cool factor, getting in on the action, was quite absent. The humor factor is just way too clean and too safe, as director Gary Ross and his co-writer Olivia Mills made this film to be played out just way too seriously and overly politically correct so that they don't anger the female demographics who are watching this movie. The jokes definitely seem to be bogged down by the petty stuff like green juice and Nutella to relieve stress. Whereas Danny Ocean was boss when it came to rigging casinos and felt adjusted to the surroundings, the motives behind Debbie Ocean's target at the Met Gala was due to walking the red carpet and getting their hands on the two saints. They seem to just take their actions with more convictions and expectancy, which has a sense of realism to how scammers and swindlers operate, but by making it real takes out the magic that made the franchise from the early 2000s successful. And that's kind of where it fails, and it fails pretty badly. Now, when I say that this movie was entertaining, it had potential, but it just didn't, because everything was all watered down from the other three Oceans movies. It was actually quite a surprise that Steven Soderbergh actually would just take a back seat and become a producer in this, as opposed to him directing the three Oceans films in the early 2000s. He was actually even just reluctant to even take part in this project because he just didn't feel the need for a reboot. But he still took the role as a producer nonetheless. So, although a lot of people gave this a really bad negative failing grade here, I'm not going to give it like a completely bad failing grade, but I can't really give it a pass either, because just everything just does not seem to fit very well. Because, poor character development, no humor, no exciting action, the twists and turns were anticlimactic, and a lot of things just seem to fall flat. So when all is said and done, if I was to give a scale out of 10, and I really hate to do this, but I give Ocean's 8 a 5 out of 10. I'm sorry, it just was not really something that I got invested in, even though I was curious as to see how it goes, being that I was a fan of the Oceans series years ago. It just didn't sit very well, and I really can't give too much credit for this movie. If they're going to do another Oceans reboot, if they want to put female characters in, fine, but it's okay to also put some male characters in there too, and just have it like equally. You want a diverse group, that's fine too. Diversity just doesn't come in the color of your skin, it also comes in just like everyone included. And nobody is treated as inferior or insignificant. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.